Greetings everybody, and welcome to day 4 of, of Marvel May 2019. First of all, I just want to say, may the 4th be with everyone today. And so, our look at Phase 1 of the MCU continues with our look at the first Thor movie. So, here we go. And just like all the other movies, I'll be looking at the plot, the production, and the music. So, here we go. In 965 AD, Odin, king of Asgard, wages war against the frost giants of Jotunheim and their leader Laufey to prevent them conquering the 9 realms, starting with Earth. The Asgardian warriors defeat the frost giants in Tonsberg, Norway, and seize the source of their power, the Casket of Ancient Winters. In the present, Odin's son Thor prepares to ascend to the throne of Asgard, but is interrupted when frost giants attempt to retrieve the casket. Against Odin's order, Thor travels to Jotunheim to confront Laufey, accompanied by his brother Loki, childhood friend Sif, and the Warriors 3, Volstagg, Fandral, and Hogun. A battle ensues until Odin intervenes to save the Asgardians, destroying the fragile truce between the two races. For Thor's arrogance, Odin strips his son of his godly power and exiles him to Earth as immortal, accompanied by his hammer Mjolnir, now protected by an enchantment that only allows the worthy to wield it. Thor lands in New Mexico, where astrophysicist Dr. Jane Foster, her assistant Darcy Lewis, and mentor Dr. Eric Selvig find him. The local populace finds Mjolnir, which S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Phil Coulson soon commandeers by forcibly acquiring Foster's data about the wormhole that delivered Thor to Earth. Rude. Thor, having discovered Mjolnir's nearby location, seeks to retrieve it from the facility that S.H.I.E.L.D. has constructed, but finds himself unable to lift it and is captured. That's because you're not worthy yet, Thor. With Selvig's help, he is free and resigns himself to exile on Earth as he develops a romance with Foster. Aww. Loki discovers that he is Laufey's biological son, adopted by Odin after the war ended. Huh? A weary Odin falls into the deep Odin sleep to recover his strength. Loki takes the throne in Odin's stead and offers Laufey the chance to kill Odin and retrieve the casket. Sif and the Warriors 3, unhappy with Loki's rule, attempt to return Thor from exile, convincing Heimdall, gatekeeper of the Bifrost, the means of traveling between worlds, to allow them passage to Earth. Aware of their plan, Loki sends the Destroyer, a seemingly indestructible automaton, to pursue them and kill Thor. The warriors find Thor, but the Destroyer attacks and defeats them, prompting Thor to offer himself instead. Struck by the Destroyer and near death, Thor's sacrifice proves him worthy to wield Mjolnir. The hammer returns to him, restoring his powers and enabling him to defeat the Destroyer. Kissing Foster goodbye and vowing to return, he and his fellow Asgardians leave to confront Loki. Yeah, I wonder how long he's going to keep that vow. In Asgard, Loki betrays and kills Laufey, revealing his true plan to use Laufey's attempt on Odin's life as an excuse to destroy Jotunheim with the Bifrost Bridge, thus proving himself worthy to his adoptive father. Thor arrives and fights Loki before destroying the Bifrost Bridge to stop Loki's plan, stranding himself in Asgard. Odin awakens and prevents the brothers from falling into the abyss created in the wake of the bridge's destruction, but Loki apparently commits suicide by allowing himself to fall when Odin rejects his pleas for approval. Thor makes amends with Odin, admitting he is not ready to be king. Meanwhile, on Earth, Foster and her team search for a way to open a portal to Asgard. In a post-credits scene, Selvig is taken to a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, where Nick Fury opens a briefcase and asks him to study a mysterious cube-shaped object, which Fury says may hold untold power. An invisible Loki prompts Selvig to agree, and he does. Foreshadowing! Well, anywho, let's look at the production of this movie, beginning with development. Sam Raimi originally envisioned the idea for Thor after making Darkman. He met Stanley and pitched the concept to 20th Century Fox, but they did not understand it. Thor was abandoned until April 1997, when Marvel Studios was beginning to expand rapidly. The film gained momentum after the success of X-Men. The plan was for Thor to be made for television. UPN was in talks for airing it, excited by the prospect. They pushed the script and approached Tyler Mane to play Thor. In May 2000, Marvel Studios bought Artisan Entertainment to help finance it as a film, but by June 2004, the project still had yet to be patronized by a studio. Sony Pictures Entertainment finally purchased the film rights, and in December 2004, David S. Goyer was in negotiations to write and direct. By 2005, though there were still talks between Goyer and Marvel, Goyer was no longer interested, though at this point the film was still set to be distributed through Sony Pictures. Mark Podovich, sorry if I mispronounced that, a fan of the Thor comic, agreed to write the script in April 2006, and the project moved to Paramount Pictures after it acquired the rights from Sony. That year, the film was announced to be a Marvel Studios production. In December 2007, Podovich described his plans for it, quote, to be like a superhero origin story, but no one about a human gaining superpowers, but of God realizing his true potential. It's the story of an Old Testament God who becomes a New Testament God. In August 2007, Marvel Studios signed Matthew Vaughn to direct the film. Vaughn then rewrote Protasevich's script in order to bring the budget down to $150 million, as Protasevich's first draft would have cost $300 million to produce. He intended to start filming in late 2008, and after the success of Iron Man, Marvel Studios announced that they intended to release Thor on June 4, 2010, with Iron Man 2 being used to introduce the character of Thor. Yeah, that never actually happened, though. Now let's move on to pre-production. Here, hold on. Okay. Vaughn was released when his holding deal expired in May 2008, at which point Marvel set Protasevich to work on a new draft and began searching for a new director. Guillermo del Toro entered talks to direct the film. Del Toro was a fan of Jack Kirby's work on the comics, and said that he loved the character of Loki, but wished to incorporate more of the original Norse mythology into the film, including, quote, really dingy Valhalla with the Vikings and mud. Ugh. However, Del Toro ultimately turned down Thor to direct The Hobbit. By September 2008, DJ Caruso had been discussing taking on the project, though he did not read the script. Later that month, Kenneth Branagh entered into negotiations to direct, and by December 2008, Branagh confirmed that he had been hired. He described it as, quote, a human story right in the center of a big epic scenario. Branagh stated that he hoped to begin filming in January 2010, and Marvel Studios set back the release of the film from scheduled July 16, 2010 date to June 17, 2011, almost a full year later. They later moved the release date to May 20, 2011, to distance the film's release from that of Captain America: The First Avenger, another Marvel Studios film that was scheduled to be released on July 22, 2011. In October 2008, Daniel Craig was offered the role, but ultimately turned it down, citing his commitments to the James Bond franchise. Daniel Craig as Thor? That would have been awesome! In February 2009, Samuel L. Jackson, who had briefly portrayed Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man, signed on to reprise the role in Thor as part of an unprecedented 9-picture deal with Marvel Studios. However, in an April 2010 interview, Jackson stated that he would not be appearing in Thor. When asked why not, Jackson explained, quote, I have no idea. I'm not in charge of making those kinds of decisions. I thought I was. They said I was in the trades, and I was like, ooh, I got a job. I called my agent, he said. Nah, you're not in it. I was like, well, and pardon my language, shit. They need to pay me if they're going to put my name in it. Later in the month, Jackson revealed that he would be filming a scene for Thor to serve as, quote, connective tissue for the Avengers. Also in February, a casting call went out looking for actors with certain physical attributes to audition for the role of Thor. In May 2009, Chris Hemsworth was in negotiations to portray the title role after a back-and-forth process in which the 25-year-old was refused early on. They gave him a second chance to read for the part. Hemsworth's brother, Liam, also auditioned for the role, but was passed on by Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige. The next day, Marvel announced that Tom Hiddleston, who worked with Branagh before and had initially been considered to portray the lead role, had been cast as Loki. In June 2009, Feige confirmed that both Hemsworth and Hiddleston had signed on. Feige mentioned that the film would take place on both modern-day Earth and Asgard, but Thor's human host, Dr. Donald Blake, would not be included. In July 2009, Marvel announced that Natalie Portman would portray Jane Foster. Jamie Alexander and Colm Fiore were reported to have joined the cast in September, with Alexander portraying Sif and Fiore's role unrevealed, though it was thought to be a villain. In an interview with Swedish news site Ystatus Allehanda, sorry if I mispronounced that, Stellan Skarsgård stated that he had joined the cast, though he did not specify his role. By late October, Anthony Hopkins had been cast as Odin in the film. The following month, Marvel announced that they had cast the Warriors 3. Fandral was to be played by Stuart Townsend, Hokan to be played by Tadanobu Asano, and Volstagg was to be played by Ray Stevenson. Idris Elba was announced to have joined the cast, portraying Heimdall. Natalie Portman revealed that Kat Dennings would be involved in the project, portraying Darcy, a co-worker of Portman's Jane Foster. In December 2009, Renee Russo was cast as Frigga, Thor's stepmother and Odin's wife. Later that month, actors Joseph Gad, Troy Brenna, and Joshua Cox had been cast in the film, though none of their roles were revealed. In January 2010, Adriana Bazar had joined the film's cast in a supporting capacity. Only days before filming began, Stuart Townsend was replaced by Joshua Dallas as Fandral, citing, quote, creative differences. When Spider-Man 4's production stalled, Paramount and Marvel Entertainment pushed up the release of Thor by 2 weeks to May 6, 2011. The Science and Entertainment Exchange introduced Marvel Entertainment, Kenneth Branagh, quote, the screenwriter and a few people on the design and production side of things, to 3 physicists, Sean Carroll, Kevin Hand, and Jim Hartle, as well as physics student Kevin Hickerson, to provide a realistic science background for the Thor universe. The consultation resulted in a change in Jane Foster's profession from nurse to particle physicist, and the terminology Einstein-Rosen bridge to describe the Bifrost Bridge. Now on to the filming. In October 2008, Marvel Studios signed a long-term lease agreement with Raleigh Studios to photograph the next 4 films: Iron Man 2, Captain America the First Avenger, and The Avengers, at Raleigh's Manhattan Beach, California facility. Production Weekly reported that filming on Marvel's Thor was scheduled to begin in Los Angeles mid-January, then moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico from March until late April. Principal photography began on January 11, 2010. A few days after filming began, Clark Gregg signed on to reprise his role from Iron Man and Iron Man 2 as Agent Coulson. In February, Paramount Pictures entered negotiations with Del Mar, California, to use a 300-yard stretch of a beach to film a scene for Thor involving 6 horses raining down the terrain. Paramount said this coastline was ideal because its gradual slope of sand down to the water creates an excellent reflective opportunities on film. On March 15, 2010, the production of Thor moved to Galisteo, New Mexico, where Cerro Pelon Ranch, an old-fashioned western film town, was extensively modified for the shoot. Brenna, a fan of the comic book since childhood, commented on the challenging of bridging Asgard in the modern world. Quote, inspired by the comic book world both pictorially and compositionally at once, we tried to find a way to make a virtue and a celebration of the distinction between the worlds that exist in the film, but absolutely make them live in the same world. It's about finding the framing style, the color palette, finding the texture and the amount of camera movement that helps celebrate and express the differences and the distinctions in those worlds. If it succeeds, it will mark this film as different. The combination of the primitive and the sophisticated, the ancient and the modern, I think that potentially is the exciting fusion, the exciting tension in the film. By April, the prospect for filming parts of Thor in Del Mar, California had fallen through. Paramount Pictures sent a letter informing the city that it had instead chosen an undisclosed Northern California location to film a beachfront scene for the film. The letter cited cost concerns with production moving too far away from its headquarters. Filming wrapped on May 6, 2010. Now on to the post-production side of things. In October 2010, casting calls revealed the film will be undergoing an undisclosed number of reshoots. In March 2011, scenes involving Adriana Bazar were removed from the theatrical cut of the film during the editing process. Branagh sent a letter of apology explaining the reasons for the cut and the desire to work with Barraza, I mispronounced it, was Barraza, again in the future. In response, Barraza stated, quote, it saddens me because the movie is great and because I was acting alongside some tremendous actors that I admire very much. But I understand the nature of films, and it's not the first or last time that scenes will be cut. Barraza appears in only one scene in the film's theatrical cut, and that same month, Douglas Tate revealed that he performed for motion capture the Frost Giants. On his hiring, Tate said, quote, "I am 6'5" and have a lean, athletic build, and they hired guys who were 6'7" and taller and weighed over 250 pounds. When the film was being edited, they wanted to make them even bigger and move faster. They auditioned people again, and Kenneth Branagh chose me to perform the motion capture movements of the Frost Giants. Awesome! In April 2011, the IMAX Corporation, Paramount Pictures, and Marvel Entertainment announced that they have finalized an agreement to release the film in IMAX 3D, continuing the partnership which began on Iron Man 2. Branagh stated that the 3D process initially made him cringe, but said, quote, "We came to feel that in our case 3D would be the very good friend of story and character for a different kind of experience." Although the film was shot in 2D, Feige stated that the, quote, "special effects for the film were conceived and executed from the beginning in 3D. The post-credits scene that sees Nick Fury approach Eric Selvig to ask him to study the Tesseract was directed by the Avengers director, Joss Whedon. Awesome! BUF Company, I guess that's pronounced, it's spelled Compagnie, served as the lead visual effects vendor working on the film, with Digital Domain also providing work on the film. Branagh stated that BUF, who developed the effects for the race through space, were inspired by Hubble photography and other images of deep space. Branagh stated that he sent paintings from classic studies by J.M.W. Turner to Digital Domain when creating Jotunheim. Peter Butterworth, VFX supervisor and co-founder of Fuel VFX, said the most challenging task was interpreting what the Bifrost will look like. Quote, "You can't Google what these things look like. They are totally imagined and within the heads of stakeholders. So to extract that and interpret it for the big screen was an interesting challenge creatively. Technically, partly creating fluid simulations that could be art-directed and used for both the Bifrost and Odin's chamber shots. Part of the difficulty with solving these is that we had to ensure they would work in stereo. In the film, Odin enters what is known as the Odin Sleep in his chamber to regenerate. Butterworth stated, quote, "For Odin's chamber, we developed a dome and curtain of light rays that hover over Odin's bed. This dome of light suggests harnessed power and energy that revitalizes him as he sleeps. We took a lot of reference from the natural world, such as the corona of the sun, and gave the sleep effect plenty of volume and space." And now finally, the music. The film's score was written by composer Patrick Doyle, a frequent collaborator of Branagh. Doyle described Thor as, quote, "the most commercially high-profile film I have done since Frankenstein," adding that the composing process had the challenge of trying to find a tone that fit the duality of Asgard and Earth. Thus Doyle and Branagh had frequent discussions on the musical direction, with the director suggesting a contemporary feel and having a balance between the music and, quote, "grand images that were not in any way hyperbolized," and the composer in turn implementing, quote, "a strong sense of melody which he responds to in my work." As Doyle declared that his own Celtic background made him familiar with Norse mythology, an old Celtic folk song also provided the inspiration for Thor's leitmotif. A soundtrack album was released by Buena Vista Records in April 2011. The film also features a song by the Foo Fighters, Walk, and both the scene where a powerless Thor shares some Boilermakers with Selvig in a roadhouse, and the film's closing credits. Marvel President Kevin Feige stated that Walk was the last-minute addition that the crew felt had, quote, "these era-appropriate lyrics and themes" upon hearing it. Branagh in particular thought that, quote, "these lyrics about learning to walk again were appropriate, quote, of a movie about redemption, learning to be a hero." Yep, that's definitely true. So overall, I think that the first Thor movie is actually pretty darn good, and I highly recommend it. So, with that being said, I give the first Thor movie 4 Infinity Gauntlets out of 5. Well, tune in tomorrow as we take a look at Captain America, the First Avenger. So, until then, stay strong, true believers.